Welcome to the TeacherCast Educational Network, coming to you from the TeacherCast studios since 2011. Join us each week as we bring you the latest educational news, EdTech updates, and hottest interviews with today's most influential leaders in education. And now, for your host, Jeff Bradbury.
Hello, and welcome to the TeacherCast Educational Network. My name is Jeff Bradbury. Thank you so much for joining us today and making TeacherCast your home for professional development. This is a bonus episode of Digital Learning Today. Today, we're going to be talking all about the ISTE conference, and I have a very special guest today. Not only is she going to be at ISTE, but she has some amazing sessions that she's going to be presenting on. One of them you can actually attend from your own house. So stick around today for a fantastic interview. Of course, all of our shows you can find over on teachercast.net/podcast. You can check out all of the archives of this show, our instructional coaching podcast called Ask the Tech Coach. And recently I did a great episode on the Jeff Bradbury Show all about how educators can use artificial intelligence to build their brand. So if you're looking for some great educational content this summer, look no forward than TeacherCast. I'm, of course, looking forward to having an amazing opportunity this year in Denver. I got a lot of fantastic sessions if you guys are going to be on the ground there. On Monday morning, we have our Ignite session, going to be talking all about how you can use the ISTE standards to help build your instructional coaching program. At noon, we're going to follow that up by talking about how my school and my classroom this year has used Google Workspace tools to create an outstanding social emotional learning curriculum that also has a little bit of marketing in it. You're not going to want to miss that. It's a 15-minute session at noon on Monday at the Google booth. Make sure you guys check that stuff out. And then at 1 o'clock, I am excited to be presenting at the Instructional Coaches Playground, talking about the 5 systems that every instructional coach needs to have in place to be successful throughout the year. Don't want to miss that one. There's a lot of great things happening at ISTE. And of course, you might just see me running around with a microphone in my hand. So if you do see me, tackle me, say hello, take a selfie. I would love to meet you guys out in Denver this year. My guest today is the director of the Experienced Educator Program at Antioch University in New England. I want to bring on today my good friend, Miss Laura Thomas. Laura, how are you today? Welcome to TeacherCast.
I'm wonderful, Jeff. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
I am excited to have you here. You know, we were talking a little bit before the show about the things that we're excited about going into ISTE. I know you're looking forward to it. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I have been in education. This is I believe my 31st year in education. I spent my first 10 years as a classroom teacher, teaching theater, speech, debate, English, and then joined the faculty at Antioch University. And I've been there ever since, running the Experienced Educators Program and doing a variety of other things for working teachers. I am particularly excited about this year's ISTE, both because I have a number of sessions and also because I feel like I've been to enough ISTEs now that I sort of know what I'm doing a little bit. And that really helps because it can be such a big, overwhelming experience. And I have some friends that I'm looking forward to seeing. And it's, my husband and I go to these together because he's also a classroom teacher. So it's nice for us to be able to get away from home and have those great teacher conversations both together. And then we also can divide and conquer. So we hit twice as many sessions. And then we meet back up and trade the things that we learned. So we get twice the bang for the buck.
That is fantastic. I remember when my wife and I used to go together to these things. That was, of course, before the triplets came. You had said that this is going to be your 5th ISTE, I believe. What brings you back year after year?
I think for me, it's the energy of just the people who are there. There's so much creativity. There's so much inspiration. There's so much excitement. And it's really nice to be surrounded by a community of people who are just really excited about what they're doing and what they're learning. I I'm relatively new to ISTE as an organization. You know, this is, like I said, my 5th year. Maybe I've been connected longer than that, but at my age, I lose track of how many years it's been more frequently. I also really like that there's such a wide variety of things and people to connect with. There's never a moment where you aren't meeting an interesting person or seeing an interesting thing. Like there's just no way to miss it, because no matter where you go or what you're doing, you're surrounded by cool people who know cool things and are excited to share.
You know, that it is true what you just said. When you're walking through ISTE, the convention center is huge. The experiences are far beyond that. I mean, there's hotels that have, experiences from different companies. There's parties afternoons. Even though ISTE says it's like Monday to Wednesday, it really starts on Saturday and kind of goes to Thursday-ish. There are so many things there. And I know some people who are going to be listening to this episode are ISTE newbies. I'm curious, Laura, what advice do you have for anybody attending ISTE for the first time?
This is going to seem unexpected, but this.
What are you holding up?
This is it's a little notebook. It's actually a notebook I got from Edutopia. But there are so many options and so many great potential things that if you don't go into it with a plan, you can easily, it's like drinking from a fire hose. You miss everything. So I sit down the night before and I write out on paper my schedule for the next day, first choice, second choice, sometimes third choice. Make sure I'm registered, make sure I know where everything is, and that things aren't, that I'm not running from one end of the convention center to the other and potentially going to miss something. And then when I'm actually at the conference, I try to stay out of that session scheduler thing, because I've already gone through and marked my favorites and I use that to make my paper list. Because if I go in there, I get distracted by, but maybe I should go to, or what about, and then I end up and my whole plan falls apart. When I started writing it down, I found that I was able to be much more present in the sessions I was in. I didn't have that constant FOMO. And so that's the advice I would give. Like, make a plan and then stick to your plan. Always have a plan B and a plan C, but really stay focused on what you're trying to do, because otherwise you'll end up just constantly chasing the thing that you think you should be doing in the moment, the thing that seems to be getting the buzz. Everything is cool. You cannot go wrong. So just trust that you're in the right place when you make those decisions in advance. And then if everything goes to heck, go to the exhibit hall.
But you said a couple of things in there I want to point out. You said have a plan A, B, and C. And then you also had mentioned the distance, right? And you might find as you're going there, especially once you get into the Tuesdays and the Wednesdays, these rooms that you want to go to might be available, but they're on different sides of the planet. And, your choice C might actually be the room right next to where you are. And so, sometimes your plan C becomes your plan A, just geographically speaking, making sure that everything is absolutely there. And I love the fact that you're sitting there walking around with the paper planner. I know for myself, I spent a little bit of time going through the ISTE app and going through online and seeing all of those amazing sessions. There's a lot. There are so many different things. Now, you are going to be presenting at the conference this year. Talk to us a little bit about some of the sessions that you're doing. You're doing one about challenge design.
Yeah. So I actually have 2 sessions that are focused on challenge design. And then I'm also participating in the higher order thinking playground, the HOTS playground, with the same sort of, still talking about challenges, but how you can use challenges to target higher order thinking skills. Another session that's focused on targeting SEL in challenge design. And then the other session is sort of a basic introduction to challenge design. Challenges, it's interesting because the word challenge as a, a piece of jargon, a word in the lexicon, it seems sort of newish to some folks, but we've actually been working with it since 1985 with a lot. We have cadre, an ongoing, well, now multi-generational cadre of teachers who've been working on and with the way that we use challenges. So everything that I'm bringing is actually created and credited, fully credited, to classroom teachers who are doing this work every day. And we call them our leadership team. And they help us figure out the best ways to do challenge design, how to teach people to do challenge design. They write challenges for use in their own classrooms and then share them. And we focus on, for us, challenges are about a learning experience in which the students and the teachers are both learning. There's a co-learning sort of thing that we really articulate. We know that all teachers are constantly learning in their classrooms, but in most cases, we don't really articulate that. And so our challenge design approach points at that as part of it. And then there's the academic piece, of course, what the kids are supposed to be learning. And then there's a process piece, a skill or a disposition that the teacher selects or the students select. There's a sort of a continuum of how that happens. And then there's these intentionally designed challenges that are meaningful problems to solve that allow students to practice academic content and the process piece in context of one another in a way that builds in a lot of reflection, a lot of opportunities for students to build agency over time, to gain skill over time. And it also completely validates that the teacher is really, for us, the most important student in the room, because the teacher has to be comfortable and confident with what's happening, and also has to really be thinking about, okay, so where am I in my learning journey? And what do I want to target for myself in this lesson? So yes, there are the things that I'm working on with my students, but what do I want to work on? I'm going to build that in to the challenge design as well. So yeah, I'm sort of working with that in 3 different lenses.
Now, the neat part about your session is first of all, it's Sunday, June 23 from 2:30 to 3:30 Mountain Time, right? So that's 2:30 Mountain Time is, I'm getting this one right now, 4:30 Eastern Time. 1:30 Pacific Time. But not only is it going to be made available for those who are at the conference, it's also available as a virtual attendee. So even if you're at home but participating virtually, we can check out your session.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And if for some reason you can't be there at all, we make all of these materials available online for free. So, if somebody's not able to join us, if they send me an email or a direct message or whatever, I'm happy to send materials. We do a ton of, this is all just designed to help teachers. It's teachers helping teachers. And it doesn't make sense to us to charge for that. We do have, of course, degrees and classes and certificates and things that people can do because we are a university, but we also want to make sure that people get what they need.
Another one of your things that you had mentioned is the playground session. Now, I did a show the other day that's released now on TeacherCast with the instructional coaches playground. Playgrounds are kind of interesting, right? They're not sit and get. Basically, you're in this, for lack of a term, pen holding area where there are a number of tables and there's a number of stages. Am I saying this right? What exactly is how do you describe a playground session?
It depends. Well, I think they're very different depending on the topic, depending on the focus area. Sometimes there's a lot of like manipulatives and, you can actually, it's like a playground. I remember going to one about that, was a NASA thing a few years ago that was just like, we built robots, or rockets or something. The great thing about them is that you get your immediate question answered. So when I go to playgrounds, I walk around and everybody sort of has I don't want to call it a spiel because that sort of undervalues it, but people have sort of here's what this is. Tons of QR codes with resources so you can go through and just collect stuff to look at later. And folks are really interested in having it's sort of like this, they're interested in having a conversation about the topic. So if I go to a table and I'm listening to them talk and I say, well, so here's what I do. And here's what I'm wondering, like, how would this work for my graduate students? Like, how could my grad students use this? Then the person at the table and I can have this conversation and potentially make a connection that we can, work with for years, because it's a great way to have a structured one-on-one conversation that lets you get a lot of information in a short period of time. It's a little like speed dating, I think. I've never done speed dating, but it's sort of like what I imagine speed dating will be or would be. It has that sort of, quick check it out, get to know what's going on there, and then decide to stay or to move on. And it's no hard feelings if people move on. Like, there's a lot of wandering around and people coming back, and it's just a great connection.
I love the playgrounds. I've done them before. I'm going to be presenting at the Instructional Coaches Playground this year about how to, I think my session is called the 5 systems that every instructional coach needs. And we're going to talk about a number of different things that coaches have to have set up. But you're right. Someone's going to walk up and listen or ask a question or have a conversation. And I love the times where nobody shows up and it's just me and somebody else for 20 minutes having a wonderful conversation. I almost love that just as much as I love speaking on large stages and in front of a lot of people. It's an amazing experience to have somebody walk away going, that was the best session possible, right? And work with one person out of 20,000. I love that experience.
Yeah, and I really appreciate when people will take my, they'll scan my name tag, or they'll grab one of I have some old school business cards, and they'll reach out later.
Yep.
And ask for resources, or they'll send me something. They'll be like, okay, so I designed a challenge and I'd love your thoughts on it. And so then we get to sort of get into the meat of it, which you can't always do during the playground. The playground is like the introduction and the first opportunity for learning. But when folks can come back together later because they had a meaningful conversation, that's I don't know, the KV Kingdom right there. That's everything.
And I know one of the blog posts that is out on TeacherCast or going to be coming out on TeacherCast is basically how do you set your presentations up so that way when people walk away, they get those resources. And in that, we talk about, have your QR codes. And when you get the QR code, that automatically puts people on your email list. So that way, even after the conference, you send them stuff and you make sure that everybody's happy. And you keep those conversations. Even the playground that I did last year, I met some really amazing instructional coaches. We're still having those conversations today. And in fact, we even had some of them recently on the podcast. So there's a lot of different connections that you can make from these great sessions. You do have one more session here that I want to talk about on Tuesday, the 25th, from 2:30 to 4:30 Mountain Time, called 2 Great Things Better Together, Designing PBL Challenges for SEL academics. This is certainly something I want to go to. We've been doing some shows here on PBL, and I'm trying to figure out in my world how I can use PBL and SEL, merge it together. What are we going to learn in that session?
Oh, gosh. Well, a lot of it will depend, I think, on how people come into the space. People sort of learn what they're ready to learn. One of the things that we ask people to do when they start with challenge design, before you can do any kind of PBL, any kind of, any kind of learning that requires people to take any kind of risk together, you have to build that community, right? And we have a slightly different way of looking at building a community. We look at it as a process rather than an event. And it's something that you have to sort of work on all the way through. And to do SEL well, first you have to have a community where people feel safe and comfortable and confident. And right now what we know is that kids came back from lockdown lacking some regulation skills. And a lot of adults are not super regulated right now. So it's hard for adults who aren't regulated to help kids regulate. So, because we're all just right here all the time right now. And so how do we, first, we're going to focus on that community building piece. Like, what does it look like when you build a community over time meaningfully, knowing that you can't not do any, like you have to do all the other stuff too. And then we're going to talk about selecting particular SEL skills. The teacher knows what those are, right? Based on the students that they have in their room. And how do I target those, particularly in a basic challenge format, which is a challenge where you take something that maybe it's an activity you already do or content that you already teach, but you know, it's been sort of a one-way experience. You give it to the kids. How do you turn that into a problem to solve together? And so, and that's really what we're going to work on, is both understanding, you know, I'm going to assume that people come in with a working knowledge of SEL, but I'll make some resources available, of course. And then we're really going to talk about that community building piece. And, you know, our community building process always started with this idea of knowledge, that at the beginning, people just have to get to know each other. Like, there's a cocktail party stage, like, what's your name? What do? Do you have a dog? What's your favorite car? What's your favorite music? Whatever. And now we're finding that kids come into school and they're not comfortable enough, they're not safe enough to even engage at that level. Like, if they won't have that conversation, they're shut down. So how do we sort of calm that amygdala so that the rest of the brain can come back online, and we can create those environments that students need so they can exchange those basic facts. We're also going to talk about conflict and moments where things go sideways, and how we can turn those into powerful learning moments where we build trust, and how they're not a sign that we're broken, or that our kids aren't supposed to do this kind of stuff, or that we're not doing it right. You know, failure and conflict are actually a sign that you're on the right track. So you got to keep going. And so we're going to examine a little of that as well. But mostly I'm hoping to get people sort of started with this and then have them dive in and start designing, because it's supposed to be a creation lab, right? They're supposed to be designing. So that's the idea. We're going to try to design some stuff and give each other some feedback, maybe, depending on how big the group is and how people are feeling in the space. And then I'll send people home with a mountain of resources.
Well, that definitely sounds like a topic that I want to come out and check out. And of course, if you guys are in Denver, that is going to be, let me see if I got the right time here, 2:30 on Tuesday at Mile High Ballroom 4EF. Which, if it says EF, I'm assuming that's a pretty big room, right? They've got two of those things with the partitions out. So that's we're looking forward to a good time there.
Well, we'll see. Hopefully, you know, I love it. I love it when they're when the groups. I'm the opposite of most presenters at these things, because I love it when the group is pretty small and everybody move. Like, I can make everybody move to the front and we can really have a conversation. I mean, my first presentation ever at ISTE, I was an Ignite speaker, and I didn't know that Ignites were like opening night. Everybody in that giant room. It was actually in Denver, and my talk was, or my Ignite speech was called "Becoming Badass," and it was easily the most terrifying thing I've ever done. A lot of fun after the fact, but that was my trial by fire. And now I'm like, you know, that was great, but I would have much rather had a slightly smaller group and be able to really have a conversation. So we'll see what happens.
The one thing that we can all be sure of is that ISTE is going to have an amazing opportunity for all of us to learn not only from each other, but really give us that opportunity to talk about our students and about how we can support student achievement in the classroom. Laura, where can people find out more information about the great work that you're doing?
Well, I am reachable on all the social media at Critical Skills 1, the number 1. So that's me on Instagram, that's me on X, that's me on Threads. And I also am on YouTube at that, but my YouTube channel is, it's a little bit hodgepodgey. I can also be reached at lthomas@antioch.edu. That's my email address. And you can certainly find me through the ISTE app right now, you know, through the contact information on my profile page. So those are probably the easiest ways to get me.
We're going to make sure that we have those links to this and all of her sessions over here on our show notes. You can head on over to teachercast.net/ISTE, and all of our ISTE sessions are going to be laid out there with all of our podcasts, blog posts, my session resources, so much stuff going on. If you are going to be at ISTE in Denver, don't forget to check out Monday morning at 10 o'clock. Monday morning at 10 o'clock, I've got my Ignite session, which, as Laura mentioned, they put you in the big room for that. We actually earlier today had our training session, and they said, yeah, there's about 8,000 seats in there. They were, of course, really wonderful to say they're not all going to be filled, but they said there's 8,000 seats. So if you're around in the morning on Monday, check out my Ignite session. Looking forward to talking about how you guys can use the ISTE standards to support your instructional coaches. I'm going to be at the Google booth at 12 o'clock talking all about how I was able to transform my curriculum this year using Google Workspace. At 1 o'clock, I'm going to be featured at the ISTE Instructional Coaches Playground talking all about how you can be productive as an instructional coach. And of course, you're going to be seeing me run around the rest of the conference with my microphone and with all of my good podcasting stuff. If you see me, tackle me, check me out. I'd love to get a selfie with you. And of course, I hope that we do run into each other. So Laura, I want to say one more time, thank you so much for joining us today. It is really good to see you. And I hope that we've got a chance to meet each other again in Denver.
Absolutely. It was a great time. Thank you so much.
And that wraps up this episode of Digital Learning Today, a bonus episode. If you haven't had a chance yet, check out all of our episodes over at teachercast.net/podcast. Subscribe to this show, our Ask the Tech Coach show, the Jeff Bradbury show, and all of our different audio and video channels over at teachercast.net. And on behalf of Laura here and everybody here in the TeacherCast Educational Network, my name is Jeff Bradbury, reminding you guys to keep up the great work in your classrooms and continue sharing your passions with your students.
You've been listening to the TeacherCast Educational Network, hosted by Jeff Bradbury. Please reach out to the show with all of your questions on Twitter at TeacherCast or online at www.teachercast.net. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss any future episodes. And please take a moment to write a review in the App Store.